Are your fitness results already written in your DNA? It's one of the biggest questions out there. So today, we're going to dig into the science to see what really truly matters more for your gains, the genes you were born with or the work you put in.
Okay, let's be real. Have you ever hit a plateau and just wondered, is this it? Have I totally maxed out my genetic potential? Or maybe you see that person who builds muscle like it's nothing and you just chalk it up to good genes. It's such a common belief, right? That our DNA just pre-writes our entire fitness story. But is that what the science actually shows? Well, the answer might really surprise you.
All right, so to get to the bottom of this, scientists have spent decades hunting for some kind of genetic smoking gun for body composition. And their biggest focus? It's been the search for a so-called fat gene, just one single piece of code that could explain why managing body weight seems so much easier for some people than for others.
And that brings us to the main suspect that scientists have been looking at for years, the FTO gene. The name literally stands for fat mass and obesity-associated protein. For a long time, this thing was considered the #1 genetic culprit. The whole theory was that certain versions of this gene could kind of subtly influence your appetite, making you feel less full and, well, more likely to overeat. But it's not just FTO. Nope. The search has been pretty wide-ranging. To date, researchers have actually identified about 100 different gene markers that seem to have some kind of link to obesity or body mass index. Now, with 100 potential culprits, you'd think the case would be closed, right? You'd think that genetics are clearly in charge. Well, not so fast.
Because here's the twist, and it's a big one. When you take all of those 100 genetic markers and you put them all together, they only account for about 3% of the difference in body mass index between people. Just 3%. That leaves this whopping 97% of the difference that's explained by something else.
And what about our main suspect, the famous FTO gene? This is the real kicker. The single most powerful gene that's been linked to obesity accounts for less than 0.5% of the difference. We're talking 0.34%. So it's become super clear, while genes might be in the script, they are definitely not the main characters. And this quote just perfectly captures the real takeaway from all that genetic research. It shifts the whole focus away from what we can't control, our DNA, to what we absolutely can, our lifestyle, our habits, and, yeah, what's on our plate. So if genes are such a minor factor, then just how powerful is our lifestyle? Well, it turns out your diet doesn't just work alongside your genes. It can actually silence them. Yeah, think of it like a genetic override switch. This is just fascinating stuff. Studies have shown that the FTO gene's effect is only activated by a certain type of diet, one that's high in saturated fats from things like processed foods, meat, and dairy. And this is the key part, if a person with that exact same gene eats a healthy, balanced diet, the increased risk of weight gain just vanishes. It's completely gone, nullified. Your nutritional choices can literally turn off that genetic predisposition. And we see this classic nature versus nurture battle play out perfectly in adoption studies. So check this out. A child with overweight biological parents has a 27% higher chance of being overweight. Okay, that's the genetic link. But what's really remarkable is that a child with overweight adoptive parents still has a 21% higher chance. That difference isn't genetics, it's the environment, right? It's the shared meals, the family habits. It just goes to show that what your parents do is nearly as influential as the DNA they give you. Now, for maybe the most dramatic proof of this whole principle, we don't even need a lab. We just need to look at a real-world natural experiment that happened with one group of people who all share the same genetic heritage, the Pima people. So the Pima have a genetic makeup that's incredibly efficient at storing calories. Now, this was a massive advantage for survival back in times of food scarcity. But in the modern world, this same genetic trait has put them at a much higher risk for obesity and diabetes. But this is where the story splits into two very different paths. And the results are just stunning. The Pima in Arizona, who mostly adopted a modern processed diet, saw their rates of obesity and diabetes just skyrocket. Meanwhile, the Pima in Mexico, who stuck with their traditional diet of beans, potatoes, and tortillas, have obesity rates 7 times lower and diabetes rates 4 times lower. I mean, think about that. Same genes, radically different diets, radically different outcomes. So, what does all of this actually mean for you? For your training? For your goals? It means the power is squarely in your hands. It's not about the cards you were dealt. It's all about how you play them. This right here is the single most important idea to take away from all of this. Your genetics might place a few potential bullets in the chamber, but they don't actually do anything on their own. It's your daily choices, your nutrition, your activity, your habits that determine whether that trigger ever gets pulled. So let's wrap this all up. What have we learned? First, genes play a surprisingly tiny role in your body composition. Second, your diet is so powerful it can literally switch off the negative effects of those genes. Third, your environment and your habits are way more important than your ancestry. And the biggest takeaway of all, you are the one in control. You pull the trigger. So the science is clear. Your DNA is not your destiny. Your effort, your consistency, and your choices are what truly shape your results. So the question isn't, what did my genes give me? It's, what am I going to do with what I have? Hey, thanks for watching. If this helps shift your perspective a little, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the science of fitness.